Coming soon to own on
YouTube and Twitch.
Why Dexter versus Jeffrey Dahmer isn't close. Now, obviously, Jeffrey Dahmer was a real person who did committed real murders and, obviously did actual serial killer things. Dexter's a fictional, but Dexter's gonna win because he's smarter, he's stronger, and he's written. He's a written character, not a actual person. We'll just keep it a buck like that.
We've seen Dexter kill plenty of fictional characters, but what would happen if he had to face off with a real-life serial killer? Today, we are going to look at why Jeffrey Dahmer would be no match for Dexter Morgan.
Calm down and I won't have to.
And also, like another layer to it is kind of like Jeffrey Dahmer targets like men, gay men, because they're easy to bring in, and Dexter targets people like Jeffrey Dahmer. So obviously, it's kind of like predator prey. He's gonna be his prey, and he's the predator.
I just get all emotional.
Jeffrey Dahmer was the stuff of nightmares. His childhood was horrid, and from that difficult upbringing, he would go on to do monstrous things. Jeffrey's mother and father were in his life, but it's been reported that they weren't exactly present. His mother was likely suffering from undiagnosed mental illnesses, and his father was very busy with work. His mother was often too depressed or distracted to show him the attention a child really needs or deserves. His father tried to connect with him through shared interests like science and the preservation of animal bodies, but he didn't notice the deep issues that Jeffrey was dealing with. Eventually, Dahmer's parents would divorce, and his mother would leave town with his younger brother. This left Jeffrey alone with no real support or supervision. It was the same year of his parents' separation, 1978, that he would commit his first murder when he was only 18 years old. His victim was a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks, who was just trying to make his way to a concert. After he murdered Hicks, Jeffrey wouldn't kill again for nearly 10 years, but once he started up again, it happened at a pretty consistent pace, with a few happening every year until he was finally caught in 1991. And he used a relatively standard method.
But like the fact he went that long in the 90s doing this shit was crazy.
To capture his victims, but they weren't all murdered in the exact same way. It's also important to note that Dahmer was a heavy drinker, even in high school. He needed to drink to be social, and once he had the courage to socialize with others, he could begin his sick process. He would appear friendly to his intended target, offering them rides, drinks, drugs.
Oh, and Dahmer was also trying to do weird shit to his victims. It was like he was trying to he drilled holes in their brains and injected them with water and shit to like try to make them zombies to his command. It was very weird.
Anything really to get them to let their guard down and follow him back to his house. Once he was there, he would usually incapacitate them by drugging them with a drink spiked with sedatives. Some he would get so drunk that they passed out on their own. Once they were defenseless, Dahmer would strangle his victims to death before dismembering them. Some of their body parts he would keep, some parts he would eat, some parts he would just destroy. His methods were truly nightmarish and horrific. He truly deserved a fate worse than death for what he did to those
very much so
men. And what was truly disgusting about Dahmer was that he had no qualms about hurting children. His oldest victims could be in their early 30s, but his youngest
he had that one, I think he was 14-year-old boy.
As young as 14. What was equally as disturbing is that he only targeted young men that police would consider quote unquote less dead. Usually
minorities, police didn't care that much about minorities back then, or gay people. So obviously, that's how shit slides under the rug so many years.
Gay or bisexual men who were non-white, all of whom had little resources or money. By targeting vulnerable men that society deemed unimportant, Jeffrey ensured that he would remain free to continue killing for years. The deaths of his victims weren't heavily investigated, so he wasn't either. His own family didn't even look too closely at what he was up to. He flew under the radar for years, and as a result, many people were killed and wouldn't receive justice for many years. Jeffrey Dahmer was a prolific serial killer, and he did manage to avoid detection for a long time. But that obviously wouldn't be a problem for Dexter. If anything, it would have made it easier for Dexter to eliminate him. Had Dexter ever caught wind of what Jeffrey Dahmer was doing, he'd have killed him with no problem at all, and he wouldn't even have to worry about outpacing the police to get to him. Sure, Dahmer was pretty sly as a predator, but as a killer, he was horribly messy and disorganized. He was always drunk, and even as a high-functioning alcoholic, Dexter's poise and long-standing sobriety would provide him the first advantage of many he would have over Dahmer. Let's remember that, much like Jeffrey Dahmer, Dexter's fourth ever victim, Levi Reed, was also a man who was regularly heavily intoxicated. And despite the fact that Dexter had just started out on his journey as a killer with a code, he was able to take Levi out with no problem. Levi made the mistake of stumbling around Miami at night, drunk and high, creating the perfect opportunity for Dexter to get to him. A serial killer himself, Levi also made the perfect victim for Dexter. On top of that, he was able to avoid a conviction due to sloppy police work on Harry Morgan's part, clearing the path for Dexter to be the one to deliver justice. And like Jeffrey Dahmer, some of Levi Reed's victims were children, something Dexter...
I haven't watched this the new reboot of Dexter. Y'all gotta let me know. Is it good or is it ass? I've been seeing people that was originally hating on it because he doesn't obviously look like Dexter, but let me know how y'all feel about that.
notoriously despises. Knowing that someone hurt kids has always brought out Dexter's most dangerous side. Once he even took out a man who was not actually a killer, but was known to prey on children in other ways. Nathan Martin was a man who had been previously convicted for assaulting a child, maybe more than one. Even though he was eventually released from prison, he had to register as a sex offender, and it's a good thing he did. He was still preying on children, following them around, watching them in public, and taking creepy pictures of them. His final mistake would be targeting Dexter's stepdaughter, Aster. When Dexter found out what he was up to, he broke into Nathan's house and strangled him to death to protect his kids and any other kids Nathan may have been victimizing. Even though not every victim of Dahmer's was a minor, a few of them were. Knowing that, Dexter would be more interested than usual in
he's
getting rid
top
of Jeffrey
priority.
Dahmer. Dexter's determination is yet another disadvantage for Dahmer. Besides Al Jolly Walker, can you name anyone else who has ever managed to evade Dexter's table once they were on his radar? And Dahmer would
Really
never
can't.
see Dexter coming. How could he? Dexter plans. Dahmer reacts. He was so used to being the hunter that he'd probably never expect to become the hunted. Like most of Dexter's targets, Dahmer's false sense of superiority and the assumption that he was safe would be yet another advantage for Dexter. Dexter could stalk Dahmer and even get close to him without ever being noticed. By the time Jeffrey Dahmer realized he was in any danger, it would be far too late for him. He couldn't even manage to keep his neighbors from becoming suspicious because the way that he disposed of his victims
A very terrible way of disposing of bodies. The whole shit smelled like fucking human feces and shit.
So haphazard. His entire apartment reeked of decomposing bodies, and he left evidence all around it. Finding him would be child's play for someone like Dexter. Before you watch any further, I'm happy to finally announce that I'm releasing
Shout out to bro. Shout out to bro.
He's an expert in forensics and has analyzed countless crime scenes. He knows what death smells like, and there is no doubt that Dahmer would have its stench all over him. That and all of the evidence Dahmer had laying around his apartment would make Dexter's vetting process incredibly simple.
He'll lose his
Watching
shit.
Jeffrey lure an innocent and vulnerable man back to his apartment would be enough to trigger Dexter's sense of justice and urge to kill. During his killing spree, Jeffrey Dahmer killed at least 17 people and assaulted many others. And who knows if every victim was even accounted for. Of course, not everyone that Dexter killed was a bona fide serial killer, but plenty of them were. The ice truck killer, the Trinity killer, the Doomsday killer, the brain surgeon. They were all far more intelligent and efficient than Dahmer ever really was, and Dexter was able to deal with them. Compared to them, Jeffrey Dahmer was a novice when it came to
Jeffrey Dahmer was like kind of just somebody who wandered aimlessly to like meet his weird pleasures versus like the people Dexter went after were very strategical killers.
killing.
And he is a strategical like hunter of these killers. So like once again, Dahmer in his mind, like he said, probably wouldn't even think that he can like fuck with him. Probably thinks he's safe. And just from just a size advantage, even though one on one he's beating his ass.
He had far fewer victims than Trinity and ITK, and he was caught way sooner. If Dexter was able to handle them, what would make Dahmer any more of an issue? Another disadvantage on Dahmer's part is that he was highly emotional. He struck out
Very
when he
much
felt
so.
rejection, and he often made rash decisions in moments of weakness, even when he may have been caught as a result. That is not something that Dexter has to contend with. Could Dexter become emotional? Of course, but that was rare, and it hardly ever impacted his process. His focus and precision compared to Dahmer's thoughtless recklessness would definitely make it easier for Dexter to finally put a stop to his murder spree. But how would Dexter even find him? Well, Dahmer's carelessness would do the work for him. Dexter could easily pose as a potential victim. Dahmer typically chose younger men as his victims, but if Dexter seemed desperate or vulnerable enough, he could have seemed appealing to Dahmer as an easy target, regardless of his age. If Dexter placed himself in Dahmer's orbit, pretending to be a hitchhiker or a drunk guy in a gay bar, it would be difficult for Dahmer to resist the urge to possess him. Dexter has tricked so many of his victims using fake names and acting the part to ignite their dark urges. He would get on their good sides, at times even making them believe that he was a kindred spirit even. When he wanted to take out Matt Chambers, a serial drunk driver who had amassed plenty of victims due to his selfish behavior, Dexter pretended to be a drunk himself to get more information. Chambers never suspected a thing. And when he wanted to get rid of Emmett Meridian, a sick psychiatrist who had pushed patients kill themselves, he made up a fake name and pretended to be a new patient. In another scenario, he used the pseudonym Kyle Butler and pretended to be a church-going divorcee to get closer to Arthur Mitchell, the Trinity killer. And those are only a few examples. He used the fake name Patrick Bateman to get Tony Farrar on his kill table, and when he needed to secure M99 for his rituals, he used the same name to keep people off his trail. And when everything finally hit the fan at the end of the original series, Dexter created an entirely new identity as Jim Lindsay so he could live in Iron Lake, New York without being identified. And everyone bought it hook, line, and sinker. He was frighteningly good at creating these false personas and using them to satiate his urges. Time and time again, Dexter acted as a wolf in sheep's clothing to make sure that he was able to take out the people he had his sights set on. Jeffrey Dahmer isn't any smarter or more cautious than the people Dexter's ploys have worked on before. If anything, he was dumber, more easily fooled. Dahmer was dumber, more
Very
vulnerable
much so,
to
dumber.
something like that than any of them, and more than he would think. Even one slightly convincing performance from Dexter and Dahmer would be just another unassuming piece of garbage to fall for Dexter's act and end up with a knife in his chest or a reciprocating saw against his neck. Dexter is just too good at it all, and Dahmer was just some drunken asshole who felt he had the right to kill people.
I feel like the better question to be asking was how long would it take for Dexter to kill Jeffrey Dahmer? I'll say like take him a week. If he knew everything he knew, like if he had the right knowledge at the start, not like where he would lived, but if he knew like there's a serial killer in Milwaukee, I feel like he can get him in a week, maybe two.
Cure his unending loneliness. And if they ever met in Dahmer's final moments, it would be his torturous loneliness that Dexter could use against him to give him the fate that he earned. And of course, not long after they were alone, Jeffrey would try to begin his nauseating ritual, but it would be no use. Dexter has already used the whole spiked drink trick on Gareth Pike, the Gemini killer. Dexter even had the foresight to give Gareth the drink without M99 in it, correctly anticipating that Gemini would switch them at the last second and end up serving himself the drink laced with the tranquilizer in it. He wouldn't fall for the same trick himself. Dahmer's entire procedure would be ruined before it ever began. And of course, Dexter would have no interest in playing coy for long. All Jeffrey would need to do is look away or turn his back, and there'd be a needle in his neck. He would wake up unrobed, wrapped in plastic, surrounded by pictures of his known victims, and finally experience the same sense of fear and helplessness he forced on so many others. When he was finally apprehended, Jeffrey Dahmer showed remorse and accepted responsibility for what he had done. He had no interest in shifting blame or denying his crimes, which is what monsters like Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy did after they were finally stopped. He also insisted that people didn't look at his parents or his upbringing as reasons to explain away what he had done. He doesn't deserve any points for taking responsibility, though. He was responsible. When offers
Very much so.
began searching Dahmer's apartment, the scene truly defied any sort of human decency and even comprehension. Inside his refrigerator sat the severed head of a man, which was placed on the shelf as if it were just an item of food. As investigators continued this search, the full extent of Dahmer's atrocities came to light. In the kitchen, they uncovered 4 more human heads. The refrigerator also held 2 human hearts, and in his bedroom, they found 7 skulls arranged like grim trophies.
Imagine in real life, like you first week on the job, you walk into some random person is in their underwear running down the street talking about somebody tried to kill him. You walk into the apartment and that's what you see. You see a nigga's head and ass sitting in the freezer. I'm not gonna lie. I'll be traumatized for life. I'll want to quit right then and there.
Freezer hid a human torso, and other parts of the apartment had even more horrors. There were preserved organs, 2 full skeletons, severed hands, genitals, torsos, and more.
This nigga was out here saving bulls. He out here saving the bulls for later. Come on, like pause. I know you was gay, big bro. But come, you ain't my big bro, but like I know you was gay, bro. You can't be out here saving the bulls for later.
Left to rot or decompose in acid. Jeffrey Dahmer was one of the most deranged people to ever exist, and he continues to shock and horrify everyone who learns of his unthinkable crimes. What he did to all of those innocent people was so evil that there is nothing he could possibly say or do to make up for it, besides eliminating himself before he had the chance to hurt all of those men, acknowledging that he was a disgusting, irredeemable, hideous monster in front of anyone who would listen was the least Dahmer could have done. Eventually, Jeffrey Dahmer would be beaten to death by another prisoner after
Chris
being sentenced to life in prison. And many people believe that that was exactly what Dahmer deserved.
Chris Sales beat the fuck out that nigga.
If not worse, even if he had to meet Dexter or anyone like him, that would probably have been too gentle a fate for a maniac like Dahmer. Still, if it were possible for them to have ever come face to face, Jeffrey Dahmer wouldn't have stood a chance against Dexter Morgan, and he would have gotten everything that was coming to him, to say the least. Of course, Dexter only exists in fiction, but if he didn't, this wouldn't even be a question. If you like this video, check out a breakdown.
Yeah, it's obvious. Jeffrey Dahmer stood no chance, but let me know how y'all feel about this down below.
Why you standing on by yourself? Those shoes are made for dancing with someone else.